All right, welcome back, rock stars. Today, I want to reframe how we think about growth in general, right? We've all been told, at least I have been, that business success is all about scale. It's about doing more. It's about taking more orders. It's about running more jobs, right? Buying more equipment. But here's the truth: scale is not about edge anymore. The world we live in today, scale is not what's going to give us that competitive advantage that we need. We don't need more. The real competitive advantage for a small business, especially, is velocity, it's speed, right? Customers aren't buying things, right? We don't need any more things in our materialistic world. They're buying speed, they're buying experiences, they're buying fast precision service. And here's the other thing that we got to be clear about: the clock doesn't start when you say it starts, right? When you're ready. The clock starts for them when they've made that decision that they're going to move forward with you. So from that moment that they give you that indicator, that's when the clock starts. And your job is then to respond with clarity, precision, and speed. And that's what wins. So today we're going to dig into what velocity and speed really mean for your intentional business, and how you can map your own process to find hidden slowdowns, and also some practical steps that you can take right away to set speed as your edge. So if you guys are ready to jump in, let's do this.
Dark days, overwhelmed, trapped in a maze. Small business owner, stress had me in a daze. Every problem piled up, couldn't catch a break. Thought I couldn't make it, my dreams were at stake. But then I found a group that changed my whole perspective. Our success group of a community so effective. We all chasing that dream, sharing struggles and fears. They understood my journey, wiped away my tears. Together we broke through, we rise above. No more feeling stuck, we're fueled by love. Our small business is shining, reaching new heights. With the support of our success group, we're taking flight. The power is strong, the vision so clear. Building our dreams with no more fear. Together we're resilient, unstoppable force. With our success group.
Let's talk some business.
All right, you guys. So first thing we want to do with everything, right? There's this 3-part cycle. That's all part of the fundamentals of business success here. We always start with plant, which is kind of our mindset, some reflective ideas, right? To really make sure that we're clear about why we're taking the effort to do this to begin with. And so first and foremost, I think we need to reframe scale, right? Like, and what success really means in our business. I think we all believe, I get more customers, I do more business, I'm going to be successful. But I'm not so sure that's the exact success that most businesses want, right? Like, if you could work with one customer and achieve the goals that you have, would that not be success, right? So a lot of times we think that success is about adding bulk, right? The more volume, the more hours, the more equipment. And this world of more that we live in, I think, is creating a ton of burnout. I know it creates burnout for me, and it creates burnout for all of us small business owners out there. And so today I really kind of landed on this notion that, and this notion came from a podcast I did with Johnny Shell. And we were kind of talking about the future of the apparel decorating world over on the Two Regular Guys a few months back. And Johnny was talking about this idea of speed. And it really got me thinking, how, as small business owners, do we look at speed, right? We're going to use the word velocity interchangeably, because sometimes even speed, right? Like, I have to hustle, gets in the way of really truly understanding what it is. So velocity, right? Less friction, being able to move quicker with more precision. And so that's what it really is. It's moving faster with precision. And no matter what your size is, honestly, this is a huge benefit of being a small business owner. It's a lot easier for you to be more nimble, to be quicker, and to operate more precisely, make decisions on the spot. And so you don't need to be big. You need to be quick and accurate. Now, there's this phrase that I've heard as I was studying this and digging into this a little bit more, called service elasticity. Now, it's not a phrase that I've used before, so I want to make sure we get this clear what that means first and foremost. And honestly, it's simply the gap between that point when your customer says yes and when they get what they expect, right? And so go back to what I said in the intro there. It's not about when you believe the order has started, it's the moment that your customer has said yes, right? So think about that for your business, right? The moment they've said, I'm interested, right? So maybe we've got somebody with a nonprofit tuning in, and that customer partner of yours says, I'm interested in supporting, I'm interested in donating, right? That's the point where they've said yes, not when you send them the information about, uh, paying here, or, here's the program, et cetera, et cetera. And then they, sign on the dotted line. That's not when it starts. Actually, it started when they said yes. Right. And so it's that service elasticity is that gap. And so we have to get away from this understanding or this idea that when the final details are in, right? Like orders don't start until this. I get that from a production standpoint, right? You have to have all of the things that you need to begin doing the thing that you're going to do. So for our printers that are tuned in here, I've got to have print ready artwork or all the details on sizes and colors and etc. Right. And that's true in that particular fashion, right? If you set those expectations, that's true. But how do they get those details to you? What's the communication before that point, right? Because again, this order started for them. This it doesn't even have to be order, right? This decision to do business with you has started when they said yes, right? And wherever that is in their mind. And every gap that you create between that yes and when you deliver, patience starts to wear thin, right? Like it's just human nature. We've said, hey, I'm going to give some of my resources, my money, whatever time value, and in turn, I want some resources back. But then the longer that takes to get those resources, the less and less patience, the less and less trust that they have. So if you deliver inside of their expected elasticity, then you build trust. But here is the real key to all of this, right? And I think this was kind of the linchpin for me from taking it to what we were talking about with Johnny Shell, a very specific conversation about the apparel decorating industry, into how we look at this as small business owners. The key is what they expect, right? What is the expectation? So if you set the expectation, I'm not saying that everything has to be done instantly, that you have to be on 24/7. But they have to know up front before they say yes what the expectation will be. Are you showing them the process? Are you making the onboarding, so to speak, easy for them? And to me, this is why it's so crucial to build an intentional business so that you can set those expectations and then get those expectations to match up with the needs of your ideal customers, right? This way, speed doesn't feel like an extra burden, adding onto that more. Oh, now not only do I have to do more, but I have to go faster. How the heck am I going to do this? Right? No, speed doesn't feel like a burden when it fits who you are, and it becomes an extension of you and your business. It just becomes the non-negotiable. It becomes the thing that is who you are. Right. So let me give you a couple examples here. And I'm curious to hear what speed means to you guys. Anybody that's tuned in live right now, I'd love to hear from you. And I will open up some of the this is live today, by the way, you guys. So I promise I'm not pretending that I'm recording it live, right? That it's live and I'm actually recording it. We are live here with you today. So I am going to open up. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so it is there. Just want to make sure because I see a few people in here, but haven't heard from anybody yet. So that's a little unusual. And let's see, maybe I'll check out YouTube real quick. Anyway, I want to hear from you guys. I would love to hear from you guys in what speed means to you. Right. And so when you think about speed in your business, what does it mean to you based on this idea that it could be your competitive advantage? So let me give you an example. Right. Maybe you're a printer, right? Or maybe you're one of my apparel decorating friends, and a customer approves a 50 shirt order on Monday, right? They make that commitment. You give them all the information and they say, yep, let's do this. Right. And then they don't hear from you until Wednesday when you finally get around to sending them the invoice, which you've indicated, you need to be paid up front. You need X, Y, and Z, but you really haven't given them any of those details yet. And you don't get them those details until Wednesday. Hi, Chuck. Now, at that point, maybe if their expectation was an immediate turnaround on that information, then they're feeling like you're slow, right? Even if you sent them the invoice, got them the information that they needed, they got back to you that day, and you printed the shirts the same day, that gap from Monday to Wednesday, if that was not expected, they now think that you're slow, right? And that you've started to stretch their patience. So, maybe that's a situation for you. Maybe that's a bottleneck for you. So can you switch the way you do business and take orders in your system so that when they say yes, it's automatic? They're getting the invoice, and that invoice also then includes a cover letter that gives them all the information that they need. So you're not having to recreate that every single time, right? So there's an example. So what does speed mean to you? Let me give you an example of somebody that maybe is a service-based business. Maybe they're a coach like me, right? And maybe they book a package with you, and you get that bing that goes off, right? You get the little cha-ching from PayPal or wherever, right? And then you've got, you want to get some information from them first, but again, you're busy, things are going on more, and you take 3 days to send them the link to get on your calendar after they've paid, right? Fast onboarding is going to make them feel cared for, and it's going to build trust. And so, again, there's systems out there that make this instantaneous. Most booking systems like a Calendly or even like a Google form, right? You can have it land at a page where it gives them information. You can set automatic email follow-ups and different email programs, CRM programs, or even a kind of a more manual automation through something like a Zapier, right? And so all these little speed things are easy to overcome, but we have to be thinking about what's right for you. So Kylene is in the comments here. And Kylene's been busy building her yoga business and having the day job. So I've given her a hiatus from Small Business Saturdays for a little bit. So she's not last minute trying to figure things out. But she says, hello, speed in the past always felt like doing more. Learning from you, I've realized the power of intentional activity gains me more speed than a little here and there. Oh, awesome. High five, Kylie. Glad that that's resonating for you. Love you, sweetie. So the mindset side of this is really we just need to shift from somebody who works a lot to I'm an owner who gets things done with speed and precision, right? Just that simple shift of mind there in that thing, right? Overwhelmed owner to I get it done. I like Kylene said, intentional activity gains more speed than little here and there. And the focus on volume might be what's overwhelming you. How do I get more customers? What if you focused instead on value? How do I provide more value? And how quickly and reliably can I deliver that value? I know that we think that we need more customers, we need more orders, we need, right? I think that's a byproduct of flipping our mindset to focusing on the value and how quickly and reliably you can deliver. If you focus on that, then the more will come, but it'll feel effortless, right? And I think that changes everything about how you approach your workflow overall. So the second kind of part of the cycle here is what we call the prepare cycle. And this is our strategy, kind of learning, setting things up, right? Setting the table, so to speak. And with everything that I talk about, and if you're tired of it, too bad. No, just kidding. Everything that I talk about, it always starts with our strengths, right? Our SVPs, our strengths, values, and passions. Because every small business owner has their own natural rhythm and capacity. So if you're trying to copy somebody else, you're probably going to be out of rhythm, right? And so you have to understand deeply what your strengths, your values, your passions are. So you aren't promising things that you can't keep, right? This is where we got to be honest with ourselves and say, okay, am I just doing that because I want to keep up with the Joneses because they do that? And I think they're successful, right? Because it's not going to work for you. right? And also when we understand the SVPs, it also allows us to create things that we can deliver on and not make it part of the more, right? You can deliver on that promise when you understand your SVPs. So as Kylene says here, SVPs are game changers. So with that being said, right, how do we strategize? What's the strategy here? How can we set this up? But the first thing that is a go-to for me, and this really is outlined pretty detailed here in the book in fundamental number 8. I didn't look up the page, but I can real quick for you here because there's an excellent table of context. 178, turn to page 178 in your book. If you don't have a book, you can go to osg.link/bizbook, BIZBOOK, and get your copy of the Fundamentals of Business Success. But that time study is something that we do in a lot of different ways. And the time study is really great for our own personal sanity and space. And we've talked about it, like how do we get our time back? But I also want you to look at this time study from the lens of your customer, right? So thinking about the time study of when somebody said yes to when they get delivered that product or service that you offer. Right. And so do that time study, but then create that map. We sometimes call it a customer journey map. And whatever is you want to call it is totally fine. I don't get stuck on here's the names, right? Because I always, going back to other things, like I always call it a reason. Other people love to call it a why, a mission. Cool. Awesome. Whatever's right for you. Anyhow, look at that time study /map of the customer journey and just step back from it for a second. And there's no wrong answers to this. So just circle things where there could be a bottleneck or a failure or a slowdown, right? A lot of times we're human, right? As far as I know, we're human. I know sometimes you guys go, no, Aaron, you're just a robot. No, not true. I'm probably more human than a lot of people, have lots of flaws and challenges. But the reality is the more we can kind of step back and look at that and circle where those bottlenecks are, you're probably going to see anytime you're relying on human interaction, a touch point that you could automate, then you might find where speed is lacking for you, right? And I think a lot of times we stop because we don't know how to, or it's going to take more time to set it up than we think it's worth. If you want to grow your business and be able to scale, again, it's not about more, it's about speed. And so from there, we need to think about automation. We need to think about standard operating procedures. We need to think about having templates. And all of these are potentially just big, scary words. The reality is automation just means how can you kind of set it and forget it. And there are some great tools out there that are super easy to use. You probably are using a tool right now and you don't even understand its automation capabilities, right? So if you've got an email service, for example, there is an automation tool inside of that. Right? If you are using a website, you probably can go and be very intentional about the email flows that come out of that and setting that up. Right? So thinking about automations, things like, if you're a printer, right? Can you do online approvals? Can you auto invoice, right? Like I said, instead of like taking the order and being in the middle of producing it and, oh yeah, I got to remember to invoice it, right? Take the order in your invoicing system and push send to start that process, right? Scheduling reminders. Maybe you're our coach, right? I think I already mentioned it, but if I didn't, Calendly is a great tool. There's all sorts of things. I use a tool called Kartra where I can build sequences and things like that. Kajabi, Thinkific, all sorts of different things out there. And you can find the one that's right for you and your budget, right? So first and foremost, automation, just be thinking about that. Secondly, then standard operating procedures. And that's just a really fancy way of saying, break down each part of the process from step A to step Z and try to make it as repeatable as possible. Take the gray out, right? I know a lot of us are creative people and creativity loves those shades of gray. We love to be general, right? But when we're getting into this portion of our business, we have to find a way to be very specific. Step, 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 step. Even if your brain doesn't work that way, Ask somebody whose brain does work that way. I'm sure there's an engineer around you somewhere. Right? There's lots of great engineers out there. Ask them, right? This is their gift. They would be very happy to, if as long as you're open to it and you're not going to fight them the whole way, right? I know we need to leave some space for creativity, us creative types, right? But the reality is the more repeatable we can make it, the better. Hey there, Barb. Good to see you. Thanks for being here. And hello to Chuck as well. Awesome. So SOPs, repeatable, quickly executable, take the thought process out of it, just go step, 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 step. Great. Next kind of tool we can look at and think about here are any templates that we can use, right? So you're probably writing the same email over and over, just writing it a different way, because the reality is 80% of all of the issues that you have or emails that you have to respond to basically are about 20% of what you're, like 20% of the things. So take that top 20% of the questions you get and turn them into a template, right? So maybe you've got email templates. I can't remember who I was talking to now. Darn it. I apologize to whoever this was, if it's you and you're in here, but we were talking about the need to just on our phones, take the note app out and create your standard response, right? Like, oh, I got my email template and maybe it's on my computer in a document or something like that, but I'm actually responding to a lot of Facebook Messenger messages on my phone. Okay. Use a note app. I've got Google Keep on my phone and I have several templates in there for different things. Right. And heck, I even have templates in there for utilizing ChatGPT. Right. So emails, art approvals, quotes, proposals, template those. Right. Yes, we want to customize things. We want to personalize things. But it's very easy to have a template and then have segments in it that you can personalize it to that person. Right. Like I might have a welcome email. And yes, there's certain steps that I want people to know about in the welcome email. Make sure you join the group. Make sure that you're subscribed to our email list. Make sure you're subscribed on our YouTube channel so you can catch all the Small Business Saturdays, etc. Right? And I can template that all up, but then I can leave a section in there where I talk about how we met, why I'm excited to work with them, some thoughts I had about the conversation we had before. So that's all personalized, but then the rest of it, copy and paste, because I know that I want to share that information every time. And then when you think about this, right, you gain even more speed when you can combine these things together, right? When you have some automation, you have a standard operating procedure, and then you have templates inside of that. Right. And so we can maybe automate this. And then when they respond, then you've got a procedure for if this, then that. And then when they choose if this, then that, then you can have a template that feeds the next segment. Right. And you're just working them through that, elasticity that we talked about, that service elasticity. That's why I don't use that word. It's hard for me to say. Service elasticity. Right. You shrink that gap when you're utilizing all those tools. So again, for my printer friends out there, maybe you've got an automated art approval. Maybe you're using a service that, it sends a mock-up out right away. You've got pre-built invoice templates and automatic email received order templates that you send. And right. Yeah, there you go. Templates is something I've been working on, Barb says, and I need to have them accessible for multiple devices. I'll be honest with you, Barb, I don't use Google Keep other than for templating. And just a quick note, it gets a little too cluttered for me. So I really have used it as a template because I can access it everywhere. I can access it on my phone, can access it. Now I do have a Google Pixel phone, so I kind of stayed inside the Google world, right? So maybe there's an iPhone kind of app that works across the board. Google Docs is definitely one that you can easily access from a lot of different places. So anyhow, I know you're working on it. I'm sure you've got something that you're going for already, but I thought I'd throw that in there. All right. So going back to that. So that was kind of the printer, right? Maybe you are a service-based business. And so maybe you do have an online booking system and then there's a kind of a canned onboard email that goes out after that, right? Sign the waiver, fill out these details so we can set up the call. And then you've got a pre-drafted proposal for once you have the call. Then you've got the proposal with all of your kind of terms and specifics. And then you just tweak that proposal for that person that you just had a call with, right? And for me, I even take that one step further. I've templated that, and then I put it into ChatGPT, feed stuff in, and say, okay, update this part for me. How would I say this? I read that, I make changes to it, and then I've got a proposal like that, as opposed to, okay, let me sit down and spend a week writing this out, right? And doing that kind of thing. So Kylene says, yeah, that's been so nice to have the automatic email go out after they sign up. Absolutely. Right. And so how can you take that another step, right? What's the next step? Follow up, maybe text message to make sure that they're going to arrive, right? That type of thing, all doable. And it just is a budget thing a lot of times for folks, or, a knowledge thing. And so kind of working into certain things is really important to kind of understand what that roadmap looks like. All right. So let's get into the practical side of this, the pollinate portion. This is where action and growth really happen. And I'm going to be a little bit blunt here, based on lack of conversation or whatever, right? People kind of showing up and leaning in. I'm not seeing that a lot right now. So either we're really busy, which is great, but if we're overwhelmed because of more, then our tendency needs to be to lean in. It needs to be to take more action, because more action, not more as in doing more, but leaning into the stuff that we can do, and leaning into the communities that we built for ourselves, right? It's either through showing up for here, Barb, Chuck, Kylene, everybody that shows up and comments in here, that type of thing, right? So I just wanted to be really blunt real quick, because you're probably missing action. Right? I hate to be that way, but I know that is where I get stuck a lot too. I'm either not taking the right action, or I'm hiding from the actions I know I need to take. Right. So just want to be clear before we get into this, because these are very practical steps that you can do, but you have to choose to do this. Right. So first off, we talked about that time study and kind of a customer experience map. And so we're not really just tracking what we do. We're tracking what your customers experience along the way. So again, getting back to that moment that they say yes. And here's the other action that you probably need to get to, if we're really getting to the root, is, do you understand when they say yes? Right. And if you don't clearly understand when they say yes, then what is it that we can do about that? I don't know. Ask them, right? Hard. I have to talk to somebody. I get it, right? I am not a fan of the telephone, right? But I do love connecting with people, and so we'll just ask them, right? Like, at what point did you say, "Hey, this was for me," and then what happened after that for you? So from the moment they say yes, how long until they get a confirmation? They get a proof to be approved if needed. They get an invoice or a payment link. They actually have product or service in hand. And then what are the gaps, right? Even the small lags add up in the customer's perception of your speed. So I've got a story of where this was glaring for me. And again, was kind of the formative part of my career where I realized that speed was a choice. So I moved to Phoenix. And when I moved from where I was living in Colorado, I was working for a printing company that did digital printing, right? And at this time, this is a long time ago, digital printing was a big deal. Not a lot of people had that ability. Most people were still doing the old plates and presses, and you had 2-week lead times for catalogs, brochures, business cards, even. Right. And so I was working for this company that was the only digital printer in this area in Colorado. And I thought I was a great salesman. But the reality was the company was just fast and nobody else could do it. And so I was an order taker, but I was also very fast at order taking, right? Like, I got the orders in very quickly because there weren't a lot of speed bumps for me to get it from person saying yes to order in the system, I'm off to talk to the next person. Right. And so I moved to Phoenix and I found a company that had the same equipment that this company in Colorado had. And I went to work for them and I started getting some opportunities. And they had this huge bottleneck because they were an older printing company that brought on this new equipment, but they still hadn't fully embraced it. So they did not have an easy to understand quoting process for us salespeople. There was a guy that had worked there his entire life and he held the key to the castle. So if you needed a quote, you had to go to him. And many times it took him longer to get quotes to people than it took the production to do the actual job. So I was not very successful there, and I'm not blaming anything. I didn't have a clear expectation or be able to express that to the customers. And so I didn't speak up and say what I just said. Hey, it takes longer to get a quote than it does to print something, right? Because I was a kid, and if I would have said that, the old guy would have had me fired on the spot, and I needed the job, right? The reality was I probably didn't need that job. I was going hungry anyways because I wasn't selling anything, and I was a commission-only salesperson. Anyhow, and then I found this industry. That's when I quit and went to work for Scott Fresner at U.S. Screen Printing Institute. So point of the story is there was a bottleneck there, but they didn't care or they didn't see it, right? And they couldn't figure out why they were losing to other people. So that's the first thing. Understand the customer map and then look for those places where you might be slow. The second thing that we can do here in action is just remove a touch point. Like simple as that. Just remove it. Look at that flow that we just talked about. And what's a bottleneck that doesn't really add any value, right? A thing that we do just to do it, just because we've always done it that way. And then just ask a simple question. Can I automate this, template it, or most importantly, if we can just eliminate it, right? So the way that going back to that printing company, the way that their system was really set up is I get this quote that he did manually on this spreadsheet, and then I had to key it into the system. And so if they would have just put pricing into the system, they could have eliminated that step, right? Which in hindsight here, the reason why that the guy had been around so long and he kind of ran the show. And so of course he wasn't going to eliminate that step because that was his job. That's why he had a job. He didn't really bring a whole lot of other value. And so we could have just eliminated that, but it didn't happen that way, right? So some examples of this might be, again, if you're sending order confirmations manually, can you set up an automated confirmation email? If you're manually building every invoice, can you take orders inside your invoicing system, right? If you're writing custom emails every time, like for example, and I care deeply about responding in a way that comes from my heart and is me. When somebody sends me an email, I've set up in Zapier to where I can move that email to a folder and ChatGPT will do the bulk of the work for me, right? And then I take what ChatGPT put into the draft and then I rewrite it slightly, right? So it gives me the flow. I don't have to think about it other than, okay, now I'm responding to somebody that I care about. Let me make sure that this is coming from my heart, right? And so it was as simple as that. Now I built a few things, right? Like, so there's context and this ChatGPT knows me, knows my writing style, knows my strengths, values, and passions, right? I've put all that into it. I've got a very clear prompt that talks about the way that I want to come off, the tone and all that other stuff. So it gets pretty darn close. And then I just have to add my own touch to it. And I've been able to then send an email back to somebody very quickly. And so small wins like that are going to compound. And so one less touch point could save you hours, if not more, every single week. All right. So that's number 2. The third practical action step that you can take is to set up one speed promise. And we'll talk about the most important part of setting up this speed promise in just 1 second. So cliffhanger, stay tuned. But customers trust businesses that are consistent. right? And so if we can, if we agree that speed could be our competitive advantage, then how can you make speed part of your brand, part of who you are? And so we've got to be able to pick a speed promise that you know you can keep every time, right? So you can't say that I respond to everything in 30 minutes, but this week I'm really busy, so I'm gonna do an auto responder that says give me 24 hours. Okay, so if you're not busy, then you'll respond to everything in 30 minutes. Right. So you got to be honest with yourself. But I'm curious, those of you that are tuned in live right now, what's a speed promise that you can keep every time? What could that be for you? Or maybe you already have a commitment, right? Maybe you've got a speed commitment. Maybe you've got a commitment and you just don't realize it's a speed commitment. So happy to talk about that. Put those in the comments there. But what could a speed promise be for you? Or do you already have one? Right. And while you guys are putting that in the into the chat there, I want to give you two examples based on two very different SVP profiles. And the ones I know the best, which allow me to give you the best information here, are my personal SVP profile and my wife's personal SVP profile, strengths, values, and passions, for those of you that aren't familiar with what an SVP is. So this first one is me. It's impact and problem solving. Those are two core key SVPs for me. And so for me, I personally thrive on fixing things quickly, right? Solving problems quickly and making a clear difference. Like I, for whatever reason, God's gifted me with this ability to look at something, and at least in my brain, I see a clear path to the other side around the obstacle, right? And so I'm working on continuing to clarify that because I believe that's what I was put on this earth to do. So I love it when our partners feel that speed, not just in how quickly I get back to them, but how quickly they get solutions, right? When people have those aha moments, those light bulb moments, right? And some of the testimonials that I've gotten, like for example, I've got a testimonial from good friend Julie Lloyd, and she said, let me just read it here so I get it exactly right. But she said, this gave me more clarity in 30 minutes than I've had in the last 3 years. Right? Wow. I mean, just still now reading that gives me goosebumps. And so, because that fits my SVP, right? She took the SVP information and in 30 minutes, she had more clarity than she'd had in 3 years. And so the speed expectation that I kind of set is every partner's challenge gets a reply that day if they email me. And I promise that I will give them what I see as a clear path to resolution if they have an open mind, right? So I think in a lot of ways from an uncommon mindset. So how that feels for me in practice is I'm not the fastest at bulk repetitiveness, right? If you want me to just do the same thing over and over again and there's no challenge to solve, probably not going to, I'm not going to be fast at that, right? But I build trust by instantly trying to address the challenge. I want to get to the solution as quickly as possible, right? And sometimes that's a little bit to my detriment. I don't sometimes give people enough space to commiserate, and I'm working on that, but that's okay, right? I'm aware of that and I can do it, right? So my edge is decisive problem solving on the spot, right? And so for me, I promise if you're stuck, I'll get you unstuck in 24 hours, right? The trick is that you've got to reach out to me, right? So I set these expectations very clearly. I don't go seek people out, right? And because one of my values also in my SVP profile is proactivity. And so I really shine when I'm rapidly diagnosing problems and offering creative fixes, not by grinding more hours. Right. So there's mine. I'm going to share Kylene's in just one second, but reading Dave shared, we're pretty slow, seriously well thought response in about a week. We generally respond in a day or two, but we have a choke point of technical thought. Our process is going to take 3 months. Okay. Right. And so if you set that clear expectation, and you set that clear expectation, and then the second comment I think is how you really, right. So I love this. Thank you for sharing this. It says our company doesn't want to solve easy problems. We want to solve hard problems. Where can speed help us? Well, and I think what you said is we want to solve hard problems, right? And so what is the expectation from the customer, right? So if I went to somebody and I said, I've got this hard problem, my expectation might be that it takes us a year or two, right? Or more, right? And so speed for you might be, again, that 3 months, right? But setting up to where speed can help you in, okay, how do you onboard them, right? How do you, right? What is the process from the time they say yes, that service elasticity, from the time they say yes until the time you start working, and then you've set those expectations for the checkpoints along the way, right? And so speed isn't necessarily like I get everything done immediately. Speed in this context is I get things done as quickly as expected, and I preset those expectations. So hopefully that helps a little bit, but I appreciate you sharing. I love that. Have to learn a little bit more about what you do there. So excited to dig into that after I get off here. Okay, so thank you for that. And Kylene says, I believe it. It's so powerful knowing your SVPs. So speaking of SVPs and Kylene, her two core SVPs are really harmony and positivity. And so she thrives on creating smooth relationships and uplifting experiences. And her speed advantage isn't going to be brute force, right? Sometimes my speed advantage shows up a little bit like brute force, right? I'm kind of persistent. I kind of forward a little bit, right? But for her, it's not going to show up like that. It's the speed advantage is she's going to get to that place of removing friction as quickly as possible and try to make the process feel effortless, right? Now, that can catch her sometimes when she's not specific and there's ambiguity, right? So she has to be very understanding of that, right? And so her speed expectation might be that she always feels heard and supported, or I'm sorry, not she, that her clients, her customers, the people that she works with, they always feel heard and supported with clarity and encouragement, right? So she'll do on Thursday morning, she does a virtual yoga experience in 30 minutes, right? It's this 30-minute time of movement. But in that 30 minutes, she has this ability to just create this harmony and peace. I haven't kept track. I need to probably start keeping a tally. How many people have told me how much peace and joy and happiness they get from interacting with my wife? And I hear that all the time. I have people like, do you just record your wife talking and just fall asleep to that? I'm like, no, I don't have to. She's normally talking to me while I fall asleep. I'm just kidding. All right. Sorry. Terrible joke. But the reality is, right, that so her speed looks different. Now, again, if she gets out of balance with that and doesn't set the clear expectations, right, then it's going to be a problem. So she might put it into practice with something like, you'll never wait more than 24 hours to feel supported. I don't know what that is for her specifically. She's got to design that herself, but she's going to use those positive touch points, right? And so even if it's just I'm going to reply to a message really quick with a positive note and then follow that up with, can I get back to you in X, right? Because she's got a day job. She's got to figure that out. But if you just leave it open-ended, right, then you're going to have some struggle there. So even if the delivery of it isn't instant, the clients are going to feel left hanging because of the positivity and harmony that she brings to it. And so the interesting part to me on this, and why I thought this was worth an entire SBS episode, is that we can both use speed as a competitive advantage, but in ways that align with who we are, right? So it's both kind of a speed idea or velocity idea, if that's a better term for you. So for me, impact and problem solving, it's just velocity through decisive action. For Kylene, harmony and positivity, and that's velocity through frictionless, uplifting experiences. So whatever that is for you, here's the second part that I said I was going to get to, right? Not only is it important to kind of clarify this, in my mind, in my opinion, it's also important for us to put it out there into the world, right? So publish it, put it on your website, use it as part of your social media posts, right? When you're sharing what you do, maybe even have it as a tagline on your invoice, right? So I worked with a company that was a distributor, and their speed was all about they shipped every order every day that arrived by a certain amount of time. And that was a non-negotiable, right? And that was on the bottom of the invoice, every order, every day. And so whatever that is for you, let your customers see it, right? And if you don't know, what did I say earlier is one of my things, right? If you reach out to me, I want to help. I want to make an impact. So reach out to me. Now, remember, you've got to have an open mind and be willing to try something different. And so if that's you, Aaron at oursuccessgroup.com. Easy peasy, right? But owning speed in one area creates a competitive edge that I believe scale can't beat, right? So that's number 2. Number 3, and then we'll kind of wrap this up here. So Kylie, it's a competitive advantage with this understanding. Thank you for breaking this down. You're very welcome. And so again, Kylie's here, so she could have been on the show, but we've just, with everything she's got going on, we've kind of made the decision that she's going to take a little pause from this so she can focus on it. But I also want her to feel like she can be student, right, without having to be up here teaching as well. And not that she can't do it, right? But sometimes we all just need to switch chairs a little bit, So maybe there'll be a time where her and I switch chairs, and that's okay, right? That's cool. We can do that. In fact, I love listening to anything that she shares whenever she does share it, right? So I can be a student there. All right. So number 3, we talked about this a little bit already in the planning phase, but let's get very specific. Let's build templates and SOPs around that promise, right? So we come up with what our speed promise is. And then can you back it up with the support of a template, an automation, an SOP, right? So for example, if you're a printer out there and you're promising quotes in 24 hours, right? And in today's world, that may be a little too slow, but that's up to you, right? If you set that expectation, right? Well, why is it important right? So maybe I've had this situation before where I couldn't quote things as quickly as maybe people were initially expecting, but I reset the expectations by saying, I want to be able to give you the best price possible. Therefore, I need a little extra time to make sure I've got the details right so I can sharpen the pencil, right? Okay, so maybe that's your thing. You're going to get a quote in 24 hours. All right, well, make sure that you've got it all set up to quickly get the details, because if you say, I'm going to get you a quote in 24 hours, they've said yes, but you're still waiting on details to quote unquote get the quote, and they don't know that, your 24 hours already started. So when they say yes, you got to be able to make sure that you capture what you need to capture, right? And so on your quote form, instead of just saying name, email, phone number, put the information in here, maybe you need to be more specific. Name, email, phone number, when you need this by, specifics of printing, couple different fields and make them required, right? And then that way, when they hit submit and they've said yes, then your 24-hour clock starts ticking, right? Another example is, if you promise to respond to all emails in a day, then make sure that you're blocking out 15, 30 minutes, right? I have a recurring task on my to-do list. I use Asana that shows up once a week to make sure I get to inbox 0. And then I also have a big rock in my calendar for clearing out emails, right? So that way I'm not stuck in my emails all day, but I'm responding to what needs to be responded to. And maybe also then having templates, right? Some of those canned responses, and maybe even taking that a step further and turning that into a frequently asked question section on your website. And then here's a cool part. Once you've done that, now you have content for your social media. Talk about what the frequently asked questions are, explain the answer and why that's important for the customer. So we just, I got to come up with a better saying because this doesn't really make me feel good, but you kill multiple birds with one stone, right? Ugh, I don't like that. But so if somebody has a better way to say that, please give me that. Please provide me that value. I appreciate you. So thinking about that, right? Those templates, but build those templates around the promise that you've made. Again, speed, velocity, it's a choice. And so these types of things really make it sustainable and not like more work. All right. So the takeaways for you guys is just speed is today's edge, right? Speed with precision, right? Understanding and setting clear expectations. Again, customers are not just buying products and services, right? We've got all of the products and services that we need at our fingertips. So we can go to Amazon for the bulk, right? They want experiences, and they want those experiences quickly and clearly without friction. So if you meet their expectations by setting expectations that are right for you, right? If you don't set any expectations, they will set the expectations that they believe are correct. And at that point, once you've said yes, or you've allowed them to say yes, now you're on the hook for that expectation. So let's get intentional and set expectations up front that are right for you based on your strengths, values, and passions. So I do want to challenge you guys this week. Do that time study or customer map, right? Whatever that is for you, whatever works best. I like the time study because it also helps me understand where maybe I'm just dragging my feet. And then be paying attention to what your customers see between yes and the delivery, right? And then set that one promise that you're willing to stand behind when it comes to speed inside of your business, and publish it, put it out there, right? Once you've published it, in fact, if you want to hold yourself accountable, put a link to it in the Entrepreneur Success Hub. Just go to osg.link/group, and that'll get you directly there, and put a link to it and ask for feedback. What better way to get perspective than just sharing something and say, hey, could you guys give me some feedback? I promise I will give you feedback on it. So if you want feedback from me, there's a way that you could reach out as well. And that one amplifier of trust could completely shift how your customers see you. And if you are ready to go deeper, I'd love to invite you guys to that free SVP clarity chat that I've been speaking about here today. And let me pull that up, right? Gain clarity and confidence. So in this clarity chat, we talk about, your offers and your operation and how it aligns with your strengths, values, and passions. And the goal is allowing you to have confidence in delivering at a speed that works best for you and your business. And so again, you'll find that at osg.link/SVP. And so I'm going to leave that up there, but let's see here. What else we got? There is a Chinese legend of an archer, Z, who shot 8 out of 9 suns to prevent a super hot summer. They have a saying, to shoot 3 suns with 1 arrow. There we go. Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you, Reading Dave. Cool. To shoot 3 suns with 1 arrow. We're going to go with that. I'm going to use that one I'm going to borrow that one, and I'll give you a credit, and then I'll take it after that. Sorry. That's an inside joke from my other podcast, The Two Regular Guys. All right. Thank you, Reading Dave. Appreciate that. All right. Thank you, guys. Appreciate you hanging out with me today. And again, be sure to join in the conversation over at Entrepreneur Success Hub Facebook group. You can find that at osg.link/group. See if I can, there it is. And, the whole goal of that group is really just a place where we can talk openly. It's a safe space to share perspectives, go deeper than just the surface level stuff. Right. And so I want to take these ideas that we're talking about here, and I'm going to talk about on the blog post and stuff like that. And we want to make them real, right? How can we make this real for you? Right? I can give you examples and ideas, but my goal is not for you to copy what I'm saying. My goal is to be inspirational so you can create what's right for you. Because if you just copy what I say, there's a likelihood that it's not going to work out for you. Right. And I feel like that's on me. A lot of coaches out there are like, well, I gave them the information, whatever they did with it's on them. It's just not the way I operate, right? If I can inspire you into doing something that works for you, then I'm not sure I'm providing the value that I'm supposed to provide. But the only way to do that is if we get in and have conversations about it. So the trick is you being engaged in the conversation, not just consuming, right? You can't consume only and expect to make progress. So there's my little soapbox moment to kind of close things up here. And next week, we're going to be diving into 13 uncommon mindsets and the uncommon results that if you're willing to try something different, I believe you'll get. You've got to be persistent and make choices based on your joy. And so those 13 uncommon mindsets we'll tackle next week. And that's all I've got for you guys today. So thanks everybody for tuning in. I appreciate you. And until then, just keep building a business that you love.
Dark gaze, overwhelmed, trapped in a maze. Small business owner, Stress had me in a daze, every problem piled up, couldn't catch a break. Thought I couldn't make it, my dreams were at stake. But then I found a group that changed my whole perspective.